Hello and welcome to the Source One podcast. Consider us your source for the latest procurement, supply management, and strategic sourcing insights, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, maybe I didn't find the lowest cost for a given item, but I know that that's the lowest cost supplier overall. And a lot of times people can't really wrap their head around that.
And when clients approach Source One for MRO assistance, are those some of the issues they're typically grappling with?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most common one is they don't even know what the issues are. Mm-hmm. They just see MRO as a greenfield of opportunity because they haven't touched it centrally. And sometimes, yes, it's a greenfield. Other times, it's not at all. And it turns out that a lot of the parts and services that are purchased are kind of unique, and there's only like select suppliers that can do certain things. But the most common thing I see is people just don't know. Mm-hmm. Like they don't really know what's feeding into the MRO spend at their operation.
Would you say that's a symptom of people just kind of repeatedly inheriting like legacy suppliers and legacy processes?
Yeah. Plus, like the consistent messaging that MRO is unmanageable. It's like, well, there's other categories that I can tackle. I'm going to just leave this one alone, and I'll get to it last.
How do you go about assessing the way an organization approaches MRO? Are they usually forthcoming with information like, well, we haven't looked at it in years, or how do you do that?
Most times they are pretty forthcoming, say that they haven't looked at it or reviewed it in years, but that means that there's not a lot of data internally available and definitely not a lot of clean data.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you go about getting that data then?
Typically, we are forced to go to the suppliers. Supplier usage reports are probably the most common way that we're able to obtain that line item level of visibility. So we'll go out and we'll collect a year or two's worth of data. That way we can understand it from a line item perspective and properly categorize it and look at it in the way that you would have to from a sourcing perspective.
And would you call that process the foundation of your approach to MRO spend?
Yes and no. There is a lot of the service side that goes into MRO as well. So it's really important to understand what the stakeholders' needs are and the supplier's service offering. So on top of just the basic purchase of a component, there's that large-scale service side as well. And I've found that facilities really rely on their suppliers to let them know the best way to actually kind of service the facility and keep things running. So there is a heavy reliance on that service component.
And what would you say makes your approach, and by extension Source One's approach to the category, unique? What are you bringing that not everyone else is bringing?
So Source One is heavily focused on making sure that the solution actually works. Whereas a lot of our Source One's competitors would go out and kind of derive a solution where it's like, well, we looked at pricing and we got you the lowest cost pricing available. And it's like, yeah, I'm never going to be able to consolidate everyone to that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not a feasible solution. So I've always made sure that every strategy that we're proposing and every solution that we're proposing is something that actually can be implemented. I'm also making sure that we're taking into account each stakeholder and facility's unique needs. That way, in the end, it not only do you have a supplier that is a solution, but it's a solution that the facilities are happy with.
And how do you ensure that the client internalizes what they've learned throughout this initiative? How do you ensure that these better processes stay in place and that spend is managed better going forward?
Yeah, so we're pretty focused on like the actual implementation and rollout, as well as heavy education. So we'll set up weekly or bi-weekly meetings to make sure that the implementation goes smoothly, as well as if something doesn't, that we'll work with the supplier to mitigate it. And then as far as internalizing it, we make sure that we're communicating with all the stakeholders and illustrating why we selected said supplier or a grouping of suppliers. That way it makes sense to them. Otherwise, if we didn't do that, none of the hard work that we did up front would be a lasting solution for them.
What's one piece of advice you would give to a procurement professional working within an organization who's up to their eyeballs in bad MRO data.
Yeah.
Or a mismanaged category.
Yeah, I would say that there's two pieces to that. Make sure that you're actually speaking with the people that are interacting with the suppliers on a day-to-day. A lot of times people are driving procurement solutions in a bubble and haven't engaged the people that are actually working with the suppliers, and they'll never find out the intricacies of what's required. So that's a common way for, on paper everything looks good, but when the rubber actually hits the road, it kind of falls apart. The other piece would be that it's about formulating a relationship with the supplier as well. So formulating the relationship with the supplier, getting that data, and formulating a relationship and understanding the needs of your stakeholders, those are going to be the two big keys to creating a successful MRO solution.
And would you say that relationship building component is another thing that makes our approach to the category unique?
Yeah, for sure. We're making sure that there's a solid foundation. So Source One also forms a relationship with the supplier. And we're making sure that there's a solid foundation, that the supplier is being heard. Suppliers want to know that their needs are being heard as well. It's not just all about the client's needs. It's about formulating a partnership where it's mutually beneficial for both sides. And a supplier is always going to be more willing to work with you if there is some relationship built. If there is no relationship and you're just demanding things, that tends to fall on deaf ears.
Well, thank you, Mike.
No problem, Bennett, and look forward to the next one.
You've been listening to the Source One podcast. For more strategic sourcing and procurement insights every day, visit our blog, The Strategic Sorcerer. Want to provide feedback or suggest a topic for a future episode? Let us know at prrequest@sourceoneinc.com. Thanks for listening.